She never dreamed big enough. Some people just settle for less. The essential oil diffuser hummed on the sideboard, pumping lavender into the dining room like it could mask 20 years of condescension. I didn't flinch. I took a slow sip of my iced tea and let the words settle into the silence. My name is Rose Caldwell. I'm 44 years old. And up until 30 seconds ago, I was cutting into a dry pork chop at my father's retirement dinner like any other daughter visiting home. Now I'm watching my stepmother, Linda, hold court at the head of the table, explaining to 14 relatives exactly why my life had been a disappointment. If you've ever sat quietly while someone rewrote your entire existence, hit that subscribe button. Because what happens next changed everything. They don't know that yet. Tomorrow morning, the Secretary of Homeland Security would be standing in the same dining room. Tomorrow morning, my father would learn that his aimless daughter had spent 18 years in places he couldn't pronounce, doing work he couldn't imagine. But tonight was not the night for the truth to unravel. Tonight, I sat at the corner of the table, the seat closest to the kitchen, furthest from the fireplace, and I let Linda perform. Rose has always been comfortable, Linda said, swirling her Chardonnay. The word comfortable landed like an insult. Some people just aren't built for ambition. And that's okay. Not everyone can dream big. She gestured toward the mantel, where a gallery of frames documented the family's achievements. My stepsister Megan's real estate license. My stepbrother Tyler's dental practice ribbon cutting. A photo of Linda receiving some kind of wellness entrepreneur award, her smile frozen in professional triumph. Not a single photograph of me. I had stopped counting the absences years ago. Growing up in the Caldwell household meant earning affection like rent, and I was always 3 months behind. My mother died when I was 6. My father remarried Linda within 2 years, and suddenly I was the leftover from a previous life, the reminder of a woman whose name made Linda's jaw tighten. I was the intense child, too quiet, too watchful, too hard to impress. By 14, I had learned that my silence was never seen as strength, only proof that I didn't matter, so I stopped trying. When I enlisted at 18, my father signed the paperwork without looking up from his newspaper. Linda had made a comment about finding structure and learning discipline, as though I was being sent to reform school rather than serving my country. I left quietly, no big send-off, no family dinner, just a Greyhound ticket and a bag packed with precision. What they didn't know, what I never explained, was that I wasn't running away. I was running toward something they couldn't see. 18 years in Border Patrol intelligence taught me things that don't fit on a vision board. I learned to read thermal imaging signatures at 3 a.m, my eyes burning from blue monitors in a windowless SCIF. I learned the metallic taste of fear when an operation went sideways, when communication lines dropped and extraction protocols kicked in. I learned that some ambitions can't be announced at dinner parties. The tunnel network took me 4 years to map. 4 years of satellite imagery, informant debriefs, coordination with DEA and FBI, and agencies whose names I still can't say out loud. 4 years of 18-hour days in a cinderblock office in Tucson tracking the flow of fentanyl that was killing Americans by the thousands, 62 tons. That's what we seized last month, 62 tons of fentanyl that would never reach American streets, never stop American hearts, never destroy American families. But I couldn't tell them that. I couldn't tell anyone. So when my father called about his retirement dinner, I said I'd drive up. I didn't mention that I'd requested 3 days of leave for the first time in 6 years. I didn't mention that I'd traded shifts with Martinez, who owed me from the Nogales operation. I just said I'd be there. What is it you even do again? Tyler asked, reaching for the mashed potatoes. Something with papers. Analysis, I said. Government work. Ah, he nodded like that explained everything. Desk job stuff. I took another bite of pork chop. It was overcooked. Linda always overcooked the pork. Rose works for Border Patrol, my father said, and something in his voice suggested he was defending me, or maybe apologizing for me. After 44 years, I still couldn't tell the difference. Border Patrol? Megan's husband, Craig, leaned forward. He sold insurance and had opinions about everything. What, like checking passports? Something like that. Must be pretty slow these days, huh? He chuckled at his own joke. I mean, with everything going on, you'd think they'd have you guys busier. I folded my napkin beside my untouched mashed potatoes. Denial, I would learn, was their specialty. They had crafted a story about me so carefully that even contradictory evidence couldn't penetrate it. In their version, I was the daughter who never quite launched, who settled for a government job because she lacked the entrepreneurial spirit to do better. They hadn't just forgotten me, they'd rewritten me. You know what your problem always was? Linda set down her wine glass with the careful precision of someone who had rehearsed this speech. You never had vision. You never set goals. You just drifted. She turned to address the table, her audience of 14 relatives hanging on every word. When Megan decided to get her real estate license, she made a vision board. She visualized success. She manifested it. Linda placed a hand over her heart. That's what separates people who achieve from people who just exist. I could feel my cousin Patricia watching me from across the table. We had been close once before Linda convinced her I was difficult. Rose never made a vision board, Linda continued. I offered to help her multiple times, but she just didn't have the ambition. Some people are born with drive, and some people, she shrugged elegantly, some people are fine with less. The silence stretched. 14 faces turned toward me, waiting for a response, waiting for me to defend myself, to explain, to justify my existence at this table. I smiled because silence had become the safest armor I owned. You're probably right, I said. I never was much for vision boards. Linda's expression flickered, surprise, then satisfaction. She had expected resistance. My agreement unnerved her more than argument would have. Well, she lifted her glass. To Richard's retirement, and to family, those who show up, and those who participate. The toast rippled around the table. I didn't raise my glass. That's when the doorbell rang. My father frowned. We're not expecting anyone else. Linda was already rising, smoothing her blouse. Probably a delivery. I ordered some new diffuser blends, but when she opened the front door, she didn't move. 3 men in dark suits stood on the porch. The one in front held credentials in a leather case. Behind them, 2 black SUVs idled in the driveway. Ma'am, the lead agent's voice carried into the dining room. We're looking for Rose Caldwell. Linda turned slowly, her face pale. Rose? What did you... That would be me. I stood, my napkin falling to my chair. The agent's gaze found me across the foyer. It stopped on the small gray pin on my collar, the one most people dismissed without a second glance. His expression shifted. Agent Caldwell. He straightened. I'm Special Agent Morrison, Homeland Security Investigations. Secretary Adams is en route. He'll be here in approximately 4 minutes. 14 forks stopped moving. The secretary, Linda repeated. Of what? Morrison didn't look at her. He was still looking at me. Ma'am, I need to confirm your credentials before the secretary arrives. Standard protocol. He paused. Codename verification. Sierra Delta 4. My father's coffee cup trembled against its saucer. I met Morrison's eyes. Overwatch Actual, Tucson Sector, Operation Nightfall. He nodded once. Then he did something that made Linda grab the doorframe for support. He saluted. Ma'am, it's an honor. Behind me, someone's wine glass shattered on the hardwood floor. And suddenly, 14 family members, including my stepmother, Linda, went very, very quiet. The wine spread across the hardwood like a blood stain. No one moved to clean it. Morrison held his salute for 3 full seconds before lowering his hand. The 2 agents behind him had assumed positions on either side of the doorway, not threatening, but present. Professional. Rose. My father's voice cracked on the single syllable. What is happening? I didn't answer. I was watching Linda, whose hand still gripped the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping her upright. There must be some mistake, she said. Her voice had lost its dinner party polish. Rose works in... She does paperwork. She told us herself. Analysis. Morrison's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside. Secretary Adams will be arriving momentarily, and we need to secure the entrance. Secretary Adams. Linda repeated the name like it was a foreign language. The Secretary of Homeland Security is coming to my house? To see Agent Caldwell. Yes, ma'am. The room had frozen into a photograph. 14 relatives suspended mid-breath, forks hovering, napkins clutched. Tyler's mouth hung open, a piece of pork chop visible on his tongue. Craig had gone the color of old milk. I stepped forward, moving past the shattered glass, past my father's trembling hands, past 20 years of carefully constructed dismissal. Morrison, I kept my voice level, kept my, what's the security posture? Clean approach, ma'am. Advance team swept the perimeter 20 minutes ago. Secretary's convoy is 3 vehicles. He insisted on minimal footprint. Morrison paused. He also insisted on coming personally, said this couldn't wait for Washington. Linda made a sound, something between a laugh and a gasp. This is insane. Rose, tell them. Tell them there's been some kind of mix-up. You work at a desk. You told us you work at a desk. I turned to face her. For the first time in 18 years, I let her see me. Not the quiet daughter she'd dismissed. Not the ambitionless disappointment she'd constructed in her vision board philosophy. Me. I do work at a desk, Linda. My voice was calm. The desk is in a SIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. The work involves classified threat analysis for the southwestern border region. And the reason I never made a vision board is because my vision involved stopping the largest fentanyl trafficking network in North American history. I reached up and touched the gray pin on my collar. This pin designates Level 4 clearance. There are only 11 people in the Border Patrol Intelligence Division who hold it. I'm one of them. Linda's lips moved, but no sound came out. I've spent the last 4 years mapping a tunnel network that stretches from Nogales to San Diego. 247 miles of underground passages, 14 major distribution nodes, coordination with 6 federal agencies and 3 foreign governments. I paused. Last month, that work resulted in the largest fentanyl seizure in U.S. history. 62 tons, street value of approximately $4 billion. The silence was absolute. Even the essential oil diffuser seemed to have stopped humming. 4 billion, Craig whispered. With a B, with a B. My father stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. His face had gone pale, then red, then something I couldn't name. Rose. His voice was barely audible. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. You didn't ask. The convoy arrived with the precision of a military operation. 3 black SUVs pulled into the driveway, their engines cutting simultaneously. Doors opened, men in suits emerged, forming a loose perimeter around the center vehicle. Then the rear door of the middle SUV opened and Secretary David Adams stepped onto the gravel. He was shorter than he appeared on television. 63 years old, silver hair cropped close, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my truck. But his eyes were sharp, scanning the property with the practiced awareness of someone who had spent 30 years in federal service. His gaze found me immediately. Agent Caldwell. He crossed the lawn in measured strides, his security detail falling into formation behind him. I apologize for the unannounced visit. When I heard you'd taken leave, I made some calls. Your supervisor mentioned you'd be here. Linda had retreated into the dining room. I could see her through the window, clutching Megan's arm, her mouth moving rapidly. Secretary Adams. I extended my hand. This is unexpected. He took it firmly. I imagine it is, but what I have to say couldn't wait for you to return to Tucson. He glanced toward the house. May we? I led him inside. 14 relatives scattered like startled birds as Secretary Adams entered the dining room. Tyler knocked over his water glass. Greg pressed himself against the wall. My father stood frozen near his chair, his retirement cake untouched on the sideboard behind him. Linda hadn't moved from her position near the mantel, near the wall of photographs that didn't include me. Adams surveyed the room with the calm authority of a man accustomed to commanding attention. Then he turned to me. Agent Caldwell, his voice carried to every corner. 3 weeks ago, you submitted a final intelligence assessment on the Sonoran Tunnel Network. That assessment was reviewed by the National Security Council, the DEA, and the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a slim leather folder. Based on your analysis, we coordinated the largest multi-agency operation in Border Patrol history. 17 simultaneous raids across 4 states, 412 arrests, 62 tons of fentanyl seized before it could reach American streets. He opened the folder. The president asked me to deliver this personally. Inside was a medal, gold and blue, mounted on white silk, the Presidential Meritorious Service Award. Agent Caldwell. Adams's voice softened. You saved thousands of lives. The fentanyl you stopped would have killed an estimated 40,000 Americans. 40,000 mothers, fathers, children, friends. He paused. The president wants to shake your hand. There will be a ceremony at the White House next month. The room had stopped breathing. I looked at the medal, at the folder, at the Secretary of Homeland Security standing in my stepmother's dining room, surrounded by lavender mist and the ruins of 14 shattered assumptions. Thank you, sir. No. Adams shook his head. Thank you for 4 years of work that no one will ever fully know about, for the nights you spent in that SCIF when you could have been anywhere else, for the sacrifice. He extended his hand again. Ma'am, you saved thousands of lives. Your country owes you a debt it can never repay. Behind me, I heard Linda make a small choking sound. I didn't turn around. I don't understand. My father's voice was barely a whisper. Rose, how did... Adams turned to face him. Mr. Caldwell, your daughter has been one of the most valuable intelligence assets in federal law enforcement for nearly 2 decades. Her work is classified at levels I'm not authorized to discuss in this setting. But I can tell you this. He paused. She's a hero, and heroes don't always wear their medals where people can see them. My father's legs buckled. Tyler caught him, lowering him into a chair. Linda stepped forward. Her face had gone the color of old paper, her carefully applied makeup suddenly garish against her pallor. But she said, Linda's voice cracked. She told us she was just an analyst. She said it was desk work, paperwork. Adams regarded her coolly. Agent Caldwell's cover required minimal disclosure. That's standard operational security for personnel at her clearance level. Cover. Linda's laugh was brittle, desperate. She wasn't undercover. She was just... She never. She turned to me, and for the first time, I saw something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Fear. You let us think. She swallowed. All these years. You let us think you were nothing. I held her gaze. You didn't think I was nothing, Linda. You decided I was nothing. There's a difference. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. Ma'am. Morrison stepped forward from his position near the door. Secretary Adams has a limited window. We need to proceed with the formal presentation. Adams nodded. He turned back to me, lifting the medal from its case. Agent Rose Caldwell. For extraordinary service to the United States of America, for courage in the face of invisible enemies, for dedication beyond the call of duty. He pinned the medal to my collar, beside the gray pin that had marked me as something more than they ever imagined. Then he stepped back and saluted. Behind him, Morrison and the other agents followed suit. 3 men, hands raised to their brows, honoring a woman in a dusty blouse who had driven 6 hours in an old truck to eat overcooked pork chop at her father's retirement dinner. The medal caught the light from the chandelier, the same chandelier that had illuminated 20 years of dismissal, of erasure, of quiet condescension. Linda's knees gave out. She caught herself on the edge of the table, sending a serving dish clattering to the floor. Mashed potatoes splattered across the hardwood, mixing with the wine from earlier. No one moved to help her. Ma'am. Adams lowered his salute. The president's office will be in contact regarding the ceremony details. I understand if you need time to prepare your family. He glanced around the room at the frozen relatives, the shattered dishes, the woman clutching the table like a life raft. It seems they have some catching up to do. The secretary's convoy had been gone for 7 minutes before anyone spoke. I stood by the window, watching the taillights disappear down the county road. The metal on my collar caught the last of the evening light, gold against gray, visible against invisible. Behind me, the dining room had become a crime scene of shattered assumptions. Linda still gripped the table's edge. Her knuckles had gone white. The mashed potatoes congealed at her feet, and no one had moved to clean them. Rose. My father's voice was hoarse. I need you to explain. I need to understand. I turned slowly. 14 faces stared back at me, some pale, some flushed, all of them rearranged into expressions I'd never seen before, not in 20 years of family dinners, not in a lifetime of being the daughter who didn't fit. What would you like me to explain, Dad? Everything. He spread his hands helplessly. How did we not know? How did you keep this from us for... He stopped, swallowed. 18 years? I walked to my chair, the one in the corner, the one closest to the kitchen, furthest from the fireplace. I didn't sit down. You didn't want to know. That's not fair. Linda's voice had regained some of its edge. We asked you what you did, and you said, I said analysis, government work. I said exactly what I was permitted to say. I paused, and you filled in the rest. What is that supposed to mean? I looked at her, really looked at her. It means you decided who I was before I ever had a chance to show you. It means every time I came home, you'd already written the script. Rose is aimless. Rose lacks ambition. Rose settled for less. I kept my voice level. I didn't lie to you, Linda. I just stopped correcting you. Her face contorted. So this is my fault? You let us believe. I let you believe what you wanted to believe. There's a difference. The room went quiet again. Tyler cleared his throat. So all those years, when you said you were doing paperwork, I was doing paperwork, intelligence assessments, threat analyses, coordination reports with agencies whose names are classified above your clearance. I paused. Paperwork that saved 40,000 lives. He flinched like I'd struck him. And the tunnel network, Craig said slowly. That was on the news. That was the big seizure they kept talking about. The one the president mentioned in his address. Yes. You did that? I mapped it. I analyzed the traffic patterns. I coordinated with DEA, FBI, and 3 foreign intelligence services to plan the raids. I touched the metal on my collar. I didn't pull any triggers. I didn't kick in any doors. I sat in a windowless room in Tucson and stared at satellite imagery until my eyes bled. But you, Megan's voice cracked. You drove here in that old truck. You were wearing jeans and a dusty shirt. You looked like... Like what? I asked quietly. Like someone who lacked ambition? She couldn't meet my eyes. My father stood slowly. He crossed the room toward me, his steps unsteady. When he reached me, he stopped. I failed you. His voice broke. I failed you, and I didn't even know it. I didn't respond all those years. Tears tracked down his cheeks. I listened when she said, I believed. You believed what was easier to believe. I kept my voice steady, that I was the disappointment, that I was the one who didn't measure up, because the alternative would have meant looking harder, asking harder questions. Rose, you signed my enlistment papers without looking up from your newspaper, Dad. You didn't ask where I was going. You didn't ask what I'd be doing. You just let me go. He winced. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because it's true. I paused. You didn't want the truth. You wanted a story that made sense. A story where Linda's children succeeded and yours just existed. The silence stretched. Linda straightened. Her composure was returning piece by piece, like armor being reassembled. Well, her voice had a brittle brightness. Obviously, we had incomplete information. If you had just told us, I couldn't tell you. I cut her off. Operational security, classification protocols, the same rules that apply to everyone at my clearance level. But that's not why you didn't know. Then why? Because you never asked. Not once in 18 years did you ask me what I actually did. You asked rhetorical questions. You asked questions that were really statements. You asked questions designed to confirm what you already believed. I paused. That's not curiosity, Linda. That's performance. Her mouth opened, closed. You've spent your life making everything loud. The vision boards, the essential oils, the constant announcements about Megan's sales and Tyler's practice. I kept my voice calm. But some things grow more powerful the quieter they are. I was just you were trying to erase me. And it almost worked. Morrison appeared in the doorway. I hadn't heard him return. Agent Caldwell. His voice was carefully neutral. There's been a development. I need a moment. I followed him onto the porch. The evening had gone purple, the sky darkening toward night. Morrison's SUV idled at the curb, a single agent behind the wheel. What is it? Morrison handed me a tablet. On the screen, a secure message blinked. Martinez ran a check on your family's communications after the secretary's visit was logged. Standard protocol for personnel at your level. He paused. Your stepbrother, Tyler, made 3 phone calls in the last hour. 1 to a local news station, 2 to media contacts in Phoenix. I read the message. My jaw tightened. He's selling the story. Appears so. Looking for payment in exchange for exclusive family perspective on the Agent Caldwell story. Morrison's voice was flat. The calls have been flagged. We've advised the media outlets that any disclosure of your operational history could compromise ongoing investigations. But he already disclosed to them. Yes, ma'am. Morrison met my eyes. That's the development. I stared at the tablet, Tyler's name on a communication log, his eagerness to monetize my secret before the secretary's car had even left the county. What happens now? Legal is reviewing options. Unauthorized disclosure of classified personnel information, potential interference with federal operations. Morrison paused. He signed the same non-disclosure agreement as the rest of your family when you reached level 3 clearance. He just doesn't remember. He probably didn't read it. Most people don't. Morrison took back the tablet. Secretary Adams asked me to inform you. He wanted you to know before you went back inside. I looked at the house. Through the window, I could see them, Tyler on his phone, Linda clutching Megan's arm, my father sitting motionless in his chair. Thank you, Morrison. Ma'am, he hesitated. For what it's worth, I've read your file. The full file. What you did, what you've been doing for 18 years. He shook his head. You deserve better than this. I have better than this. I touched the metal on my collar. I have the work. That's always been enough. When I walked back inside, Tyler was still on his phone. No, I understand, but the exclusive angle is that I'm her brother, stepbrother. I can give you the family perspective, the years of... He saw me. His face went white. I have to call you back. He lowered the phone slowly. Rose, I know what you were doing. I kept my voice level, Morrison told me. The room went still. You signed a non-disclosure agreement 6 years ago. When I received my level 3 clearance, every member of my immediate family was required to sign. You were told in writing that any unauthorized disclosure of my operational status would be a federal offense. Tyler's mouth opened. I don't remember. You didn't read it, I know. I stepped closer, but you signed it. And 40 minutes ago, you made 3 phone calls attempting to sell classified information about a federal agent to media outlets. Linda's hand flew to her chest. Tyler, what did you do? I didn't sell anything. I was just... He looked around wildly, seeking allies. They can't prove anything I didn't actually disclose. The calls were recorded. Standard protocol for communications originating from the residence of any level 4 agent. I paused, which is what this house became the moment I walked through the door. Tyler's phone slipped from his hand. It clattered against the hardwood. You're looking at federal charges, Tyler. Unauthorized disclosure, attempted interference with ongoing operations, possibly espionage, depending on how the investigation develops. Espionage? His voice cracked. I'm a dentist, and I'm an intelligence officer. The law doesn't care about your profession. Linda surged forward. You can't do this. He's family. He made a mistake. You have to... I have to what, Linda? I turned to face her. Protect him? Make it go away? Use my connections to sweep his federal crime under the rug? Yes. She grabbed my arm. That's what family does. We protect each other. I looked at her hand on my sleeve, then at her face. You don't get to weaponize family and then demand its protection. She dropped her hand like she'd been burned. For 20 years, you told me I wasn't really family. I was the leftover, the disappointment, the daughter who didn't count. You erased me from the photographs. You erased me from the toasts. You erased me from every story you told about this family's success. I kept my voice steady. And now, the moment you need something from me, suddenly family matters. Linda's face crumpled. I'm not going to interfere with the investigation. If Tyler broke the law, and he did, he'll face the consequences. The same consequences anyone would face. I paused. That's not cruelty, Linda. That's equity, something you never seemed to value when I was the one being judged. My father rose from his chair. He moved slowly, like a man navigating rubble. When he reached me, he didn't speak. He just stood there, close enough that I could see the tears still wet on his cheeks. I'm sorry, his voice was barely audible. I'm so sorry, Rose. I looked at him, at the man who had signed my enlistment papers without looking up, who had let Linda rewrite my story for 2 decades, who had been content to let me fade into the background of his new family's narrative. I know you are. Can you forgive me? The question hung in the air. I thought about all the years, the silent dinners, the absent photographs, the way he'd looked away every time Linda delivered another casual cruelty. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm not going to pretend everything is fine just to make this easier. He flinched. You were supposed to protect me, Dad. That's what fathers do. And instead you let her decide who I was. You let her erase me. I didn't mean to. Intent doesn't undo impact. I touched his arm briefly. I don't hate you, but I'm not going to pretend I'm okay just because it's uncomfortable to admit you failed. He nodded slowly, tears still streaming. What happens now? I go back to Tucson. I have work to do. Operations that don't stop because one family dinner went sideways. I paused, and you figure out what kind of man you want to be for whatever time you have left. I drove out that night. The metal sat on my passenger seat, catching the headlights of passing cars. The road stretched dark and empty ahead, and for the first time in years, I felt something unclench in my chest. Not joy, not triumph, relief. I had spent 18 years carrying a weight they never knew existed, protecting people who were too busy dismissing me to notice, building something real while they built vision boards and wellness empires and comfortable lies. The tunnel network was dismantled now, 62 tons of fentanyl that would never reach American streets. 40,000 lives saved by a woman who drove a dusty truck and sat in the corner at family dinners. 3 months later, I stood in the Rose Garden. The president shook my hand while cameras flashed and dignitaries applauded. Secretary Adams introduced me to a room full of people who understood exactly what I had done and why it mattered. My father wasn't there. I hadn't invited him. But when I returned to my apartment that night, there was a letter in my mailbox. His handwriting, shaky but deliberate. Rose, I watched the ceremony on C-SPAN. I cried the whole time. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I just wanted you to know. I see you now. For the first time in my life, I see you. And I am so proud of the woman you became, not because of me, but despite me. Love, Dad. I read it twice. Then I set it on my kitchen counter and poured myself a glass of wine. I work in Tucson still. Same SCIF, same monitors, same 18-hour days when the operations demand it. No one at headquarters calls me a hero. They call me Rose. Sometimes Caldwell, sometimes Overwatch Actual when the secure lines crackle, and the work gets real. That's enough. Last week, I got word that Tyler's case had been resolved. 2 years probation, federal supervision, loss of his dental license pending review. Linda reportedly tried to hire a lawyer to fight the charges, but the evidence was irrefutable. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired. There is power in silence. I've always known that, but I understand it differently now. Silence isn't the absence of noise. It's the weight of what people think they know about you, pressed down so hard it squeezes the breath out of your own truth. But silence can also be a choice, a discipline, a weapon wielded by those who understand that some things grow more powerful the quieter they are. My stepmother said I never dreamed big enough. She was wrong. My dreams just didn't fit on a vision board. They fit in a windowless room in Tucson, in 4 years of satellite imagery, in 62 tons of poison that will never kill another American child. I am Rose Caldwell. I am 44 years old. I work in a SCIF in the desert, and I don't need anyone to see my medals. The work is enough. It always has been. If you enjoyed this story about quiet competence, winning over loud arrogance, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell for more stories just like this one. Thanks for watching.